are so many rental investment strategies out there. There's long-term rentals, medium-term rentals, short-term rentals, rent by the room, co-living. It's a wonder that anybody is able to pick one and focus on one because, hey, let's get this straight. It's just there's a lot of ways to invest and a lot of ways to do it. And today I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of each of these strategies and give you a little bit of an overview so you can make the best decision that's going to work for your investment. So if we haven't met, my name's Doug Barinas. I'm a licensed real estate agent in Oregon and Washington and an accredited investor. If you're interested in investing in the Portland metro area or you're interested in investing out of state, I'm currently offering free consultation for out of state investors looking in affordable markets that have favorable regulatory environments. And I can help you go through that entire process from locating a property to getting a team that's going to help you from a real estate agent, property manager, vendors, etc. So if you're interested in that, click the link in the description to schedule a brief chat with me, or you can post something in the comments and I'll get back to you. Investing in real estate. It can be very complicated. It can be very overwhelming. There's a lot of different strategies. So today I'm going to go over these strategies and give you the pros and cons and hopefully give you some clarity on what's going to work best for you. So first strategy we're going to go over is long-term rental. And this is what most people think about when they think about investment properties and renting. So this is going to be your 12-month or more lease where you have a tenant move in, they're moving into an empty house, they move all their stuff in, they sign the lease, they give you a deposit, and they are your tenant. And so this is what we think about when we think about renting a place, right? We've all been renters at some point. And so the pros of this are, consistent rental income. So ideally, right, if you're screening your tenants well, you're going to get that consistent rental income for that entire year. You're going to have a deposit to cover any damages, and you're really looking for ease and consistent payment. So if you're using a property management company, you're not going to have to deal with any of that. You do have to have some oversight with the property management company. And if they're not a great property management company, you're going to have a lot of oversight. But ideally, you're going to have some simplicity and consistency with a long-term rental strategy. It's straightforward. You can get rental comps easily, and there's minimal involvement for the investor if they want. So some of the cons of this strategy are going to be your rental income is limited. It's one of the on the lower end of rents. Long-term rent is not necessarily maximizing the income potential of that property. And so you might be leaving some money on the table. Also, because you're entering into a tenant-landlord relationship, these tenants, depending on where your properties are located, could be well protected. You can have to go through the eviction process. It could take a long time. There could be a lot of damages to your property that you're going to have to pay for. And so these properties tend to get more wear and tear, surprisingly, than short term or medium term, because you do have that turnover. People generally are on their best behavior. So you tend to have more damage and higher chance of having an eviction. Again, this could be mitigated with great tenant screening, but even with adequate tenant screening, expect to go through an eviction during your time owning the property. So that's long-term rentals. Next strategy that we're going to go over is going to be short-term rentals. So these are typically Airbnb or VRBO. They're vacation homes, and the rent, you're typically renting them out for less than 30 days. They are vacations, 1 day, 2 day, a week. They are vacation homes. So they're typically going to be located in markets that have uh, amenities and sites that people are going to want to go to. So they're in mountain ski towns, they're in theme park towns, they are in any sort of place where tourists are going to want to come. A big city that attracts a lot of tourism, a Los Angeles or, maybe a Miami. So a destination. So these properties are typically going to look like vacation homes. So high-end amenities, very specialized. So they might have like special decorations depending on who they're marketing to. There's like, a subset of like bachelorette party places. There's also like college football game themed places. And so really you're looking at these are vacation rentals. You're in the hospitality business if you're doing a short-term rental. So the pros of doing this are that it is can be very lucrative in that if you have a place that is in high demand, in a high demand area, you can command a premium and you can do very well with a short-term rental. Some of the cons are going to be that this space has become more competitive. So to stand out, you need to have more expensive high-end amenities or a theme that resonates with people. So the Airbnb VRBO space has just become more competitive in general, especially in the last 5 years. You really have to be an expert operator to succeed. And another con is going to be regulations. A lot of places are clamping down on Airbnbs. They're trying to regulate them more. And so this can be an issue that could impact your bottom line and something you're going to want to pay attention to wherever you decide to purchase your short-term rental. Another thing is going to be operating expense. So if you're not the one who wants to do the amount of communication it takes, coordinating with guests, checking them in, answering all their questions, changing out the toilet paper, washing the towels, washing the sheets, it is very labor intensive. And so you could either do that yourself, but if you're going to handle it yourself, it's going to be a lot of work. If you want to have a property management company that focuses on short-term rentals take over all your management, well, that's going to cost you a pretty penny. So, I mean, upwards of 25 and even 35% is going to go to these short-term property management companies that are going to handle that all for you, but at a cost which is going to significantly eat into your bottom line. And so those are some of the cons. Next up on our list of investment strategies is going to be medium term rental. So this is something that I'm personally looking into converting some of my long-term rentals into is medium term rentals. So medium term rentals, like short term rentals, are going to be fully furnished. The utilities are generally going to be included, and they're going to be for stays that are 30 days or longer. A lot of times these are going to target like traveling nurses or people who have insurance claims and need to live in another house for a few months while their home is being repaired. It could be like college professors who are temporary, it could be people moving to the area who just need a few months to get acclimated. I think the demographic for this strategy is going to expand because less and less people are wanting to like drag around all their stuff. So it's not about stuff as much anymore. It's about like the amenities. So it's a little bit less intense than a short-term rental because you're not necessarily dealing with a vacation type environment. These people are definitely going to be interested in being closer to amenities or closer to work. So if they're, traveling nurse, they're going to want to be pretty close to the hospital, or they're going to want to be in a desirable area that they can sort of maximize. Because although they're medium term renters, they're not vacationing, they might have an element of that in their stay, especially if they're like kind of digital nomads. So people that kind of move around just looking to explore different areas and they work from home. They're going to want to be in like sort of the hippest area or someplace that's near, what's going on. They're going to want to be near the action. And so some of the pros of this are that it's less intense than a short-term rental. So because it's 30 days plus, you're going to have to handle less communication. There's going to be just less muss, less fuss because they're just staying longer. You're also going to be able to maximize your income a little more um, than a long-term rental because you're going to be able to charge a premium because it's furnished. You're providing all utilities and Wi-Fi, and then those little extras. You might have a big screen TV, you're going to have, nice beds. So it's going to be a furnished place that's going to command a bit of a premium. And so it's kind of the sweet spot between a short-term rental and a long-term rental. And the advantages are that sometimes, or a lot of times, depending on the area, of course, these aren't going to fall under landlord tenant laws. So they're not going to be Airbnbs or VRBOs. I think they can fall under landlord tenant laws if they stay long enough, but they're not regulated like Airbnbs. So you got to check your local jurisdiction. But I think a lot of times, if it's like 28 days or more, they don't count as short-term rentals, and so they don't fall under that potential excessive regulation or regulation that you're seeing in the Airbnb and VRBO space. So it's kind of a way to skirt around that, but still maximize the income of your home. And those are medium-term rentals. Some of the cons, similar to short-term rentals, are it's going to be a little more intensive. There's a little bit more expense up front in furnishing each room. And so you're going to see a little bit more of an upfront cost. Again, this should all be baked into the cake. So where you're going to be making money, but it's going to take a little bit longer because of that expense. Next up on our list of investment strategies is one that I am coming around to, but I'm still skeptical about, but I'm willing to give it a shot or at least a consideration. And that is the co-living space, or what's commonly known as like rent by the room. And so this is really an interesting area if you can kind of wrap your mind around it. And the idea is that you are maximizing the space in your home and you're renting to people who are basically renting by the week. So each room in the home has its own locked door, and then there's common areas and common bathrooms. Some of the bedrooms with en suites you could charge more for, but each room is going to be its own separate entity. And so this is done through sites like PadSplit is a big one. They're not in every market, but they screen tenants. They have a membership portal, and then they onboard those members. They do background checks. They make sure that these tenants can pay, and then they rent your room by the week. And so really it's about maximizing bedrooms in a home. And I've seen people like frame in their dining room to make that into another bedroom. I mean, you can get kind of nuts with it. But the homes I'm kind of considering for this strategy are more like these 5, 6 bedroom places where you don't need to do a lot of renovation, but you can still maximize the amount of bedrooms. So each of these goes from, in my market here in Vancouver, they're like 2 to 375 a week, depending on, obviously the amenities. But this is a little bit different than like a room share because typically these are like they're not owner occupied. Every room here is rented by somebody. So it's a little different than these sort of room share sites like Roomster. This is a really interesting population because what I think this is doing is really you're trying to turn your place into a multifamily, basically. You're trying to turn your single family home into an apartment. And the tenants that you're renting to, they can't afford a 1 or 2 bedroom place because it's too much. They're looking for something that's clean, that's furnished, that's in a decent area, that's safe, but they don't want to pay a lot of money for it. So they're willing to do this room share thing. And so, if you're doing 250 a room, or sorry, 250 a week, that's $1,000 for one room. So you got like 5 rooms, you're looking at $5,000. And then if you have an ensuite with a bathroom that you could charge more for, that's even more. So you're really juicing up your single family home and really making it into a multifamily. So that's kind of the pros of it is that you can maximize your income pretty quickly, depending on how I wouldn't want to do a lot of modification to a home because then if you wanted to go and sell it, it's kind of a weird layout. And so I would just purchase these 5, 6, 7 bedroom homes and then just do those by a rent by the room strategy because a lot of times those homes don't rent very well. Like people aren't usually looking to rent a 7 bedroom home unless it's in an area where you could do short-term rental, like it's in a high demand vacation area or city. Then that would be great. But for this strategy, I'm interested in it because it's you can maximize that income, but you don't have the constant communication you do with the short-term rentals. So the cons of it are it's kind of new and you're kind of relying on the platform to do a lot of your due diligence. I think PadSplit takes like 8% fee, which seems well worth it. That's kind of your standard property management fee. But I don't know how much you have to change out toilet paper and this and that. And I do worry about disputes and I do worry about tenant quality because this does have like kind of a house. I've heard it referred to as like a halfway house model. But honestly, I think these tenants for these are just people who are like trying to build credit. They're trying to save money. They don't have money for like a giant deposit. So they want to get in some place for less money. And that's kind of the advantage of it. And I see this being very popular in the future because we're just headed to renter nation. People are just going to be renting, prices are unaffordable. There's a need for affordable housing. And so this really kind of the ideal candidate for this is like people who are responsible and are kind of building, they just don't have a lot of money. Maybe they will in the future. They're just kind of starting out. They need a safe place. They don't want a lot of hassle. It's very, very Gen Alpha. Like they want a furnished room. They don't need all the extras. And this is serving a growing community. So I'm pretty excited about it. I haven't done it yet. I'm thinking about it. I'm looking at it. PadSplit is not in my areas where I invest. So they're not in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They're not in Vancouver. So I'm hoping to kind of get it kicked off here, maybe like get a property and try it out. And so we'll see what happens. But those are the pros and cons of these investment strategies. If you have an investment strategy that you use that you like, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Or if you're interested in one of these strategies or have questions about them, let me know in the comments as well. I'm happy to answer those based on what I know, and hope you've enjoyed this. If you're getting any value from these videos, it really helps me if you just hit the like button and consider subscribing if you want more information about real estate and real estate investing. And I hope you have a great day. Take care. See you.